Hey guys, my name is Ronald. I'm the co-founder of About Fraud, and I'm the webinar host for today. Today we talk about mobile identity, and everybody knows this is really the new big thing. And we're going to discuss with two experts how that potentially will replace the SSN. So let's talk about our speakers first. Next slide. So our speakers are Brian and Serge. So Brian, please take a minute to tell the audience who you are.
Thank you, Ronald. So I'm a seasoned product leader with expertise in mobile authentication, identity verification, and fraud prevention. I hold patents in identity verification, access management, and security. And my mission is to drive growth at Zumigo by delivering mobile authentication and risk solutions. I've got experience in customer identity access management, anti-money laundering, identity assurance level 2 compliance solutions, which is essentially document verification with a biometric selfie, and reducing friction in consumer interactions. Thank you.
Nice. And I'm Serge. I am a product manager here at Equifax Digital Solution. I'm an active fraud fighter as of the last 3.5 years since I joined the organization. A proud member of the digital identity community and just responsible for our portfolio of identity fraud and compliance solutions in the market. Before Equifax, I spent over a decade in various innovation, product, and sales marketing roles. Both in I work from General Motors, ADP Services, and Wells Fargo. I do have deep domain knowledge in terms of identity fraud and compliance, and I have a passion for fostering digital security collaborations in this world of increasing digital interactions. So happy to be here with Brian and Ronald to talk about mobile identity.
Perfect. So we have a great panel of experts with a lot of experience. And today we talk about mobile identity. We talk about what are the challenges and opportunities. And it's good to see how Zumigo and Equifax partnered up for this big mission. And so let's dive into more details for this webinar. Next slide. So Brian, you take this first.
Challenges of a digital economy. So digital channel engagement is a must for all businesses today for better, faster customer experience, expand reach to global markets, reduce costs of operations, and improve efficiency. But the engagement of online activities by consumers, including account origination, sign-in, making purchases, etc., all requires authentication of the consumer. Today, there are many different ways of authenticating the consumer. By themselves, there are weaknesses. Why other solutions don't work? They're not real-time, not authoritative, require out-of-wallet, high-friction driver's license verification, pattern-based guesswork, dependent on IP address, anonymous IPs and VPNs, all of which can be proxied. We need a more comprehensive, more accurate way of authenticating consumers because a low-friction consumer experience is very or extremely important to business growth and a competitive differentiator. We need a better way of authenticating the consumer, but we cannot solve it with layers of authentication because customer login experience is very important. 83% of respondents say that a seamless customer login experience is very or extremely important. So basically, the point is we need a better way to authenticate consumers, but we also need to prioritize the experience. This is a roundabout way of saying that a different approach is needed. We need to design an authentication solution and understand what makes a good, unique consumer identifier. Usernames and passwords are not the solution, and the solution is not government-issued documents, which I affectionately refer to as Doc V. Next slide, please. Yeah, mobile identity is the new digital real-time SSN. And so your mobile identity, including your mobile phone number, is associated with account activities in the new real-time digital identifier. Why do we say that? Because everyone today, except for kids and perhaps some of the elderly, has a mobile phone and an account attached to the phone number. Your mobile account is a paid service connect to a real person, and all behavioral activities associated with the mobile number become data points that can be used to authenticate the consumer. For example, Zumigo can use the mobile number to first verify that it has been assigned to a consumer and not deactivated. Then look at account tenure, SIM swap, porting events, and velocity, along with call forwarding, to assess the real-time risk profile of the phone number. Verify the identity of the consumer and score the trust of the interaction, all in real time. Call forwarding, unfortunately, is often overlooked as a risk signal and should always be assessed before texting a one-time passcode. If delivering password resets and one-time passcodes via email, you'll also want to verify the email address ownership, which Zumigo can help with. Zumigo's mission is to protect mobile identities and use them to effectively combat modern fraud. Zumigo's secret sauce is the real-time digital identity network we have built and leverages our partnership with more than 800 carriers globally to authenticate possession, verify ownership, and establish trust, all in an effort to help enterprises eliminate fraud. Next slide, please.
I have one more question, Brian, before we jumping into more details. You talk about the device, and we have seen that Apple just launched the new iPhone, and many of us already have the new iPhone. So this is really adding a challenge for you guys to really validate or identify that Ronald has now a new phone, but it's still Ronald, or how is this really impacting the, let's say, the data which you provide to your customers?
Yeah, so eSIMs, I think is what you're referring to. Is basically a soft SIM card. When I was back at Verizon Wireless in like 2013, we were talking about eSIMs and preparing for them. So the mobile ecosystem is well prepared for eSIMs, and they function very much like a physical SIM card. So that eSIM has an identifier separate from the SIM itself, right? And so that eSIM basically is the source of truth for the provisioning of that mobile phone, and it functions very much like a SIM card. We've verified this with all the carriers, and so there are no issues with number portability and keeping track of these events. They flow through the same systems like a physical SIM does today.
Yeah,
I think,
if I can add and piggyback on Brian's point as well, is that Zumigo's solution is consent based, right? And so the consumer is actually consenting to share the information, and that also helps with all of the improvement that Apple and the other OEMs are making in terms of making the data available.
That's a good point, Serge. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, where are we? Next slide, please. Yeah, you've got it. Why mobile identity verification wins. And so what we've seen in the marketplace is, back 10, maybe even, a year ago, the mobile operators allowed Zumigo with implied consent to silently and frictionlessly retrieve the consumer's mobile number in the background. And so we could immediately, when that subscriber landed on your page, we could verify possession of that phone number. And then with a few more bits of information, we could verify ownership. And so what's happened within the last 6 months or so is the mobile carriers now require us to ask the consumer to volunteer their phone number. Much like you would enter a username, you are now being required, all our use case implementations now are required to prominently ask the consumer to volunteer their phone number. And so that's been the shift in the marketplace, that is establishing the phone number as the unique identifier for consumers. And so that's why I believe the phone number as a mobile identifier is going to win in the marketplace. Verifying a consumer's mobile identity has strengths. It does not rely on IP addresses, anonymous IPs, or VPNs, which can be proxied. It's not vulnerable to simple hacking like email. It uses real-time authoritative data, not predictive or historical data. It does not impede the consumer's experience with unfamiliar processes like a FIDO consent or a high-friction out-of-wallet driver's license verification with a biometric selfie. The end result is a deterministic identity verification using real-time mobile data to produce a holistic profile of the consumer at this point in time, frictionlessly. I have a couple examples. Predictive models have bad seed data, which leads to financial institutions originating accounts to fake identities. I read a research paper recently about a major financial institution performing a scrub of all accounts and found more than 30,000 fraudulent accounts. These are synthetic IDs that were used to open those accounts. How does this happen? Because top of funnel identity verification relied on old data to verify an identity based on phone number, email address, or IP address, or a supervised model that was built with stale data. Right? By the way, these models quickly become obsolete because they are trained using data that is already a month or a quarter or more old. And these models are generally trained once a year and require a lot of effort for enterprises to prioritize the work and adopt a new model. So let's just say, for example, I go and train my new model, version 5 of my model, using data that is a quarter or a month old. I make it available, generally available for my enterprises to adopt. Now they have to prioritize this on their roadmap, which sometimes is a 6 to 12 month out effort. By the time that model gets in production, it's already 18 months old. You get my point? I have another example. Reliance on government issued documents like a driver's license to verify a consumer's identity. This is a high friction out of wallet experience that leads to high abandonment rates, especially when the document image capture experience is poor, which produces a pass fail undetermined response that you can't rely on. This leads to bad actors getting on your platform and drives negative sentiment for your brand, which we can all agree is bad. It's real easy to get a good fake driver's license. You can easily defeat Doc V with a good fake driver's license that you can purchase for $65 with a 2D barcode that scans. That's the important thing, is that 2D barcode scans with a PDF 417 and it works for $65. So, we talk about making fraud expensive for bad actors to perpetrate. Having a mobile phone account that you pay hundreds of dollars a month for is extremely expensive for a fraudster to instrument breakout fraud with. So, it's expensive to exploit fraud with a mobile number. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big topic that you guys are now partnering up. And also here we have prepared some insights, how we're actually combining the data and creating even a better customer experience and stopping more fraud. So that's an exciting part now.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to introduce the partnership between Zumigo and Equifax because it offers significant potential to create a very robust mobile identity-based product. And so, as Brian gracefully demonstrated, Zumigo has spent years developing expertise in mobile identity, device location, verification, and device profiling, right? All of those capabilities that Brian enumerated. And when you add these capabilities to Equifax comprehensive financial and personal data on consumer, including credit histories, employment details, and more, now this combination really offers a multi-layer verification process, right? Ensuring that the person making the transaction is genuine, they possess the financial credibility to do so. And what makes this partnership even more special is that it's a great example of what I like to call the federation of good guys, right? We always talk about the federated model for digital identity. And this is a perfect example of us, the good guys, banding together to defeat fraud and to help our customers to onboard more good consumers on their products and services. We hear about fraudsters collaborating all the time, and it's time for us to join forces and to fight the good fight. So really, really happy about Zumigo and Equifax partnering.
Thank you, Serge.
Next slide.
About Zumigo, any business that interacts digitally with their consumers needs to balance protecting the business and offering a delightful, friction-free consumer experience. Zumigo's mobile identity network delivers mobile intelligence, risk signals, and trust scores to help enterprises reduce bottom-line fraud losses, drive top-line revenue, and build consumer trust in your brand. Founded in 2011, Zumigo built an industry-unique digital identity network by partnering with global carriers, authoritative third-party data sources, and payment information providers. We work with more than 800 global mobile operators reaching more than 180 countries. The top 10 global banks verify identity using Zumigo to authenticate possession and verify ownership of the mobile phone number. Zumigo is led by a team of industry veterans and is backed by some of the leading venture capitalists, including Aligned Partners, Wells Fargo Ventures, Intel Capital, and Capital One Growth Ventures. We work with hundreds of partners, including the partners I just mentioned. Next slide, please. Zumigo builds trust across the digital journey. We do this with Zumigo's mobile identity network, which delivers mobile intelligence for businesses that reach their consumer via digital channels, including signups, sign-ins, purchases, and support. We identify risky consumers and transactions at the top of the funnel before they are onboarded, fulfilled, or speak to a call center care agent. Across the arc of consumer interactions with your enterprise, from account origination, call center interactions, chargeback fraud prevention, to alerting the enterprise to phone number risk profile changes, Zumigo's got you covered. With real-time risk scores that are calculated using signals from mobile operators that empower the enterprise to take the appropriate action, authenticate consumers without friction or passwords, and helping enterprises instrument additional layers of security, including MFA and FIDO-like cryptographic authentication. Next slide, please. Zumigo's agnostic mobile identity network allows us to partner with many different service providers and deliver the most comprehensive analysis of risk associated with the mobile identity. We aggregate live data and produce real-time risk scores for businesses to determine whether they want to approve sign up, sign in, or fulfill a transaction. Zumigo ingests information from service providers and telecom infrastructure operators to assess account, phone number, and device risk signals. From credit bureaus, Zumigo analyzes consumer behavior risks. From government databases, we can verify business information as well as against AML watch lists, anti-money laundering watch lists. And from financial institutions, we can verify payment credentials. The risk scores we provide are based on assessing whether the phone number can be trusted at this point in time, whether the phone number is being ported out to another carrier, and whether the email and IP address can be trusted. Our model is ideal for partnerships so that together we can deliver even more value to the enterprise. Next slide, please.
All right. And thank you for that, Brian. So as you saw on a prior slide that Brian had, the credit bureau pieces where Equifax come in, right? Everybody knows this as a credit bureau, but who are we really? I mean, um, what people don't know is that Equifax is a global data analytics and technology company, and we play an essential role in the economy by helping companies in various industries to make critical decisions with greater confidence. And some of the verticals we cover are obviously financial services, but automotive, communication, utilities, fintechs, healthcare, insurance, retail, e-commerce, government. I mean, you name it, right? We play a role in all of these verticals. And our unique blend of differentiated data is really our differentiator. Um, Analytics and technology let us create insights that power decisions to move people forward. So we help business provide seamless and positive experiences during life's pivotal moment, right? Like applying for a job. We have a very good um, workforce management solution business, or applying for a mortgage, right? That's part of financial services that we cover. Financing and education, buying a car, right? Those are additional examples of financial services. Now, Equifax's purpose is to help people live their financial best, and so we strive to create economically healthy individuals and communities everywhere we do business. I mean, in a single year, for instance, our unique data and analytics can change millions of lives across the world. When you think about all of the applications that we receive, whether it's credit cards or mortgages or auto loans, right? So most people are familiar with Equifax for the credit risk services that we provide, and they come to us to gain more predictive power. They want to make smarter and faster decisions with direct access to our superior data and analytics. And they want to understand their business and their consumers' behaviors for better lending outcomes. And that's kind of how we're plugging into Zumigo. We also have a very strong verification business, right, where we allow businesses to confidently verify employment, income, and education information for credit products, whether it's mortgages or government programs, right, like for people who are going to receive those entitlements. And then lastly, the identity and fraud piece is huge for Equifax, and that's the line of business where I play in, and that's where we have established this partnership with Zumigo. So super excited to kind of deep dive into some of the use cases. So next slide, please. Thank you. All right, and so Equifax and Zumigo, how are we better together, right? So you've heard Brian go at length about the strong Zumigo capabilities in the mobile identity space, right? They've been able to silently authenticate a user using a mobile phone number and connecting with the mobile service provider. Now, if you add the PII data that Equifax has, in addition to the mobile data that Zumigo is able to provide to us, what that leads us to is the pre-fill use case, right? So it's creating an ease of onboarding new customers. It reduces friction and it improves the customer experience while checking for fraud passively. And so by combining Zumigo and Equifax data, we can automatically pre-fill an application. Think about those lengthy application processes like credit cards or mortgages, or even trying to rent a property, right? Like all of those are extensive applications where you require a lot of information. And by combining both data sets, you're able to create a frictionless customer experience in pre-filling these applications. The second use case is one that we like to call the update ID use case, right? So within that use case, we're able to leverage Zumigo and Equifax data to identify a member of households who are not primary on account. Um, One of the things that the telco do is that they send us the information for the primary account holder whenever we submit a number. Now, because we have additional data points to complement that number, we're able to leverage Equifax data and filter through to make sure that we can hone in on the specific household member that is actually performing a transaction. So by combining Zumigo and Equifax, you essentially get better data quality. Next slide, please. All right. So the solution that Zumigo and Equifax created together is our real-time mobile user identity product. We have a suite of product that we call the InstaTouch suite. And within that suite of products, we have multiple types of verification that triangulate digital and identity data against known authenticated assets. So for instance, by looking at what the customer have, who has physical possession of the device, for instance, what do they know, right? Does the person with the device really own the device? And that's where Zumigo comes in handy. And validating that the core of the identity, like does the identity itself present any risk, right? Those three elements allow us to, pre-fill an application, and that not only becomes easy, but it's also safe because we don't just do pre-fill, right? We actually do identity verification while we're actually pre-filling the information. And while pre-fill is helpful for new account opening and adding new user to an existing account, it's also very helpful to build identity trust. And it should really be integrated as part of the whole digital experience for our customers. And so this is what we are actually, pushing into the market. Next slide, please.
I have a short comment about this, or a question, because I also learned in our discussion which we had before that if you're doing a pre-fill, it's a good risk signal if someone is actually changing the data. Maybe Brian or Serge, you can spend here a minute about this, because I think that's a good sign if you do the pre-fill, but someone is trying to actually change it or adding something. I think that's potentially a good signal here.
Brian, want to take this?
Yeah, I can speak to that. And so my past life working, in this identity verification, taking friction out of the retail credit card experience, we instrumented a pre-fill use case for a major consumer retail credit card company. And we did that using mobile authentication and a pre-fill. And I was able, and because of this engagement, I was able to reduce that company's fraud losses 80% by simply pre-fill. Nice. And what we found was, and the reason we were able to do this was that we are able to pre-fill with the best name and address information in the marketplace using authoritative third-party data sources. And what we found is when the consumer changes that information, it's potentially fraudulent. And so we would take these consumers down a yellow path. They would get step ups and credit limits less frequently, over a longer period of time. And there would be intelligent friction added in their consumer experience, prompting that user for a driver's license verification with a biometric selfie. And what you find is when you prompt a user for a biometric selfie and it's a bad actor, they usually fall off. They do not complete that flow. Because they don't want to give you a good picture of their face. And it's pretty simple stuff. Right? It's common sense.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I definitely have to piggyback on that. The layer of verification that we've baked into InstaTouch ID to do the pre-fill, it's that verification layer where we actually look at the telco data and we cross-reference that against Equifax data, right? And only when those two data sets match do we pre-fill an application. So unless there are errors, in the information that's available, which happens very rarely, right? Like there's no reason for anyone to modify any of the pre-fill information. And so I agree with Brian, if there are changes on the pre-fill data, that's typically a risk signal, and you want to make sure that you create some type of step up or some type of increased friction to make sure that you validate that this is not a risky transaction. So, good example, good question.
I have one more question. I mean, Brian, you mentioned before that you normally provide a score back to your customers. If we're now combining the data from both sides, and pre-filling the information, would it still provide a score back, or is the result the pre-fill?
So the result is a score with the pre-fill data, right? And so generally a score of 80 and above is safe, right? Now it's up to the enterprise to determine how much risk they want to take on and manage. So the enterprise is it's at their discretion to pre-fill when the trust score is below 80, but they understand that they're taking on that additional risk.
Okay, but it could means that you do a pre-fill, but at a certain score, you might doing a manual review or adding something on top. If maybe not sure yet, but you don't want to decline the customer, so you might adding some extra layers to make sure your decision is right.
That's correct, right? So we can get back the data and the score, and through our onboarding professional services engagement, we help educate the enterprise on what appropriate actions to take based on a score.
Cool. I think now we prepared a couple of use cases where I think we can provide to the audience a good perspective how to apply this kind of technology in a good story and a good user experience.
Absolutely. And happy to walk us through a couple of these use cases where we actually deployed our joint solution to common customers. The first one, which is kind of the low-hanging fruit, is the credit card application rate. So our customer was one of the largest U.S. bank that offer financial services to its customers, right? Credit cards, online banking, loans, mortgages, etc. Their objective was to increase their credit card application by offering sign-ups on the mobile device. Just like every other vertical, right, in the last 3 years, COVID has precipitated the migration to the digital side of commerce. And so it benefits a lot of our customers to have these processes online. And the challenge that they were facing, though, is that the huge abandonment rate because of the high friction experience on a mobile device. As you mentioned, we're talking about collecting PII and filling up application. If it's already a challenge on a desktop device, can you imagine a challenge on a smaller footprint, right, on your mobile device? And so the solution that we recommended to our common customer was this pre-fill solution, right? As we mentioned, it's a low friction environment that allows you to collect very few inputs. As Brian mentioned, Zumigo has the capability of providing PII or data that's associated with the number. And when we receive that information, we're able to cross-reference that against the Equifax data and mitigate fraud risk, right? When all of that matches, then we use this information to pre-fill. So essentially, upon authentication, a customer could just fill up an application at as low as 9 strokes, right? And that literally led to a double-digit increase in the credit card sign-up that our customer experienced. Very powerful use case that we're able to roll out and super successful for that customer. Any questions? Let me pause here, or any comments?
I think it's a perfect use case. And again, everybody can resonate to this. I mean, everybody has done this already and felt the pain, especially like you referenced on the mobile. I think I have maybe one general question. I mean, we talk about good and bad customers and also talking about real time. So is there also a way for any kind of customer providing negative feedback to each of you, which you're going to incorporate and attaching this again to the mobile number?
That's a very good one. So the way we do negative data, at least at the Equifax level, and Brian, I'll just let you talk about the Zumigo side, but the concept of consortium data comes to mind when you talk about negative data, right? Like we like to just compile those negative lists and bake that in as part of the onboarding process as well, where we can use that as another data set that we can cross-reference against, because that's true, Ronald, right? Like you can get defrauded and share this information with your consortium. That way, if that fraudster is trying to go to another member of the consortium, he'll get flagged, right? And essentially, that's what we do. We have what we call the known fraud exchange, which is a contribution-based system where our customers will report their negative fraud events to us, and we'll compile all of that and use that as a repository, another data set to cross-reference against.
Nice.
Brian, can you add from your side some?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly can. We're talking about confirmed fraud, right? So, and then consumer and enterprise is consuming a Zumigo service, and this account origination turned to be fraudulent, right? And so usually that comes back to us via operational call, like, hey, we queried you 6 months ago, we got back this green, all thumbs up response, and this account has turned fraudulent. And so that's a break the glass type of investigation for us, where we go back and look at historical data to understand how this happened. And so, in terms of, that data, a lot of times it's a misunderstanding on the enterprise's side of how to handle that score or that response back, right? Again, all our data is authoritative, real-time, sort the truth data. So,
but also a good touch point with the customer to iterate about the solution and the data. And I think nowadays data becomes quite complex. And I think it's important to really understand the data in the right way. And I think for a lot of companies, always a challenge. Even if I get a score, do I clock now with 65, 68, or 69? And is it changing on a daily basis, changing on the product, changing on the city level? I think that's here where enterprises still need support to really taking finally the right decisions.
Yeah. And so to that point, we have a phone monitoring service, right, where you can enroll phone numbers. You can enroll all the phone numbers that your enterprise is managing, has in your data set for your customers. And we can push alerts to you, notifying the enterprise of status changes to the phone number. So let's just say, a good example, call forwarding was enabled for Serge's phone number. We can push to the enterprise that feature is now available or is enabled for Serge, and you should not be sending text messages. You should not be sending one-time passcodes to Serge at this point.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and to piggyback on Brian's, there's creative ways as well to enhance the security posture of those applications, right? For instance, we all know the deficiency of one-time passcode, right? That can be forwarded. A good way to mitigate that, instead of sending the passcode, is to send a hyperlink, right? And Zumigo does a great job at that. By sending a hyperlink, when the user actually clicks on a hyperlink, we're able to actually capture more risk signal from that device, right? Instead of just copying and pasting, the hyperlink, or forwarding that to another device, for instance, we're able to capture if that hyperlink was forwarded, right? And we can flag that at inception, so that whoever receives that forwarded hyperlink is not going to be able to use it.
Yeah,
and so just small creative ways, and we don't want to give all of the secrets either, because we know that folks are listening. But great question, and there's definitely some creative ways for us to make sure that we capture a lot of that negative data.
Good point, Serge.
Yep.
Cool. So
awesome
let's
question.
jump to the next example.
Let's move on to the next slide. Yep. So the next example was in the real estate vertical. And so our customer here was a company that provide resident screening and applicant resident risk score to property managers and landlords. Again, I keep going back to the COVID period that we just came out of, right? A lot of those processes became very stressful for companies. So can you imagine landlords trying to get more tenants, during that COVID period? Now, the objective for them was to assess potential renters, making sure that they have the ability to pay, and make sure that they can protect themselves from fraud. And of course, they want to reduce the cost of eviction, and especially in that challenging environment. Now, their challenge is that typically renters application and the process of screening those applications is very time consuming. It relies on a lot of manual checks, which introduces human error. And typically, the staff is not equipped to detect false information, right? Like, so if I'm Brian and I come in, fill up the application, but I enter Ronald's information, right? Like the landlord may not be able to detect that and may not have the right solution to detect that. So what we recommended again was our joint solution, the Instant Touch ID solution integrated with Zumigo identity verification solution to essentially verify a renter identity through the mobile device, right? Again, it's that low friction 9-stroke at most application process where you give us very little pieces of PII. And with that new mobile identity, aka the new real-time social security number, we're able to provide verified renters identity information, and then use that information to pre-fill the application quickly and confidently. So as a result of that implementation, we've seen that company just have faster processing time, tons of better user experience based on the feedback that they received from their end users, and a tremendous decrease in operational cost, right? They reduce fraud by about 73%, which is huge in terms of hitting the bottom line. So another good example of how our joint solution is helping our customers. So let me pause for any questions or comments.
I think it's a really good general example here to digitalize a process which have been potentially very manual in the past. I mean, even if you skip the fraud topic, but more just getting the process very operationalized and low friction, even internally for someone looking at all these applications, maybe it takes a lot of time, so you can really do it more or less real time. I think that's a good one. Huh?
Absolutely. And one last use case. The last company that the last vertical we looked at was in the healthcare industry, and our customer is a leader in healthcare data curation. What they do is that they leverage big data and AI, and they have tons of domain expertise in the insurance claim processing and healthcare billing, process and vertical. That company's objective was to identify and authenticate consumers automatically at the start of the claim submission, and in order to reduce risk and to remove potential fraud, right? Now, the challenge with the claim process is similar to credit card and the rental space, is that it requires tons of information. It's even more stringent than the other two processes, because if you think about, when you fill in an insurance claim process, I mean, they keep asking you for information as you go down the funnel, right? And so really, that was a serious challenge for their end user, and that led to loss of revenue. So the solution that we implemented this time was not the pre-fill solution. It was more so the update ID use case, right? Where we're leveraging Instant Touch ID integrated with Zumigo identity verification to identify essentially member of an household, make sure that we have the right person within the household that's actually performing this transaction or filing this claim. And the way our customer went about adding friction to the process is they made it risk-based, right? And as the user is going further down the funnel where they need to provide more sensitive information, we start introducing more friction at that level, right? Like, so think about if we are at the end of your claim cycle and we're about to issue a payout, right? We want to make sure that we're paying out the right person and not a fraudster that kind of led us on. And so that was another great use case for our customers. And as a result, they were able to authenticate household member, more accurately, provide deeper insights to their insurance customers, and that led to a better consumer experience and more revenue for them, essentially by gradually introducing friction over time. So another good example of our collaboration again.
Yeah, and we have to keep in mind when we're looking at statistics that the claim fraud is one of the biggest issues for insurances.
Absolutely.
They spend a lot of time and effort in trying to identify them, but still losing a lot of money for fraudulent claims. So that's why that could be potentially a good scenario for a lot of insurances using such solution to lower operational effort, but also lowering the costs which they have with fraudulent claims. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, from my side, these are good examples to really putting all the bits, let's say bits and pieces together and showing how to implement this in a real life example. I just made a few notes during our discussion. Brian, you mentioned before that Zumigo is not looking only at phone data, but also you're combining a whole range of data. Maybe you can provide high level the most important data points which you're covering and actually how you collect them. So is the phone number always enough to combine other data, or would you need the email address, et cetera, to actually validate it?
Well, emails, phone numbers are bread and butter. It's where we start, right? We work with a number of authoritative third-party data sources. Some are indexed by phone number, right? Where you can query with a phone number and give data back. Others require, let's just say, an email address, right? But when we get into email addresses, it's a bit interesting that the data is, depending on the supplier you're working with, is very nuanced, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have to add layers of intelligence on top of these data sources. And that's what Zumigo does, right? So we have extraction, transformation, load processes, ETLs, right? Where we're consuming, let's just say, some batch data on number assignment, right? Deactivations, do not originate type phone numbers, right? Which a phone number is deactivated, so it shouldn't be you shouldn't be able to authenticate with it. But we find bad actors that will go and use that deactivated phone. And some suppliers in the marketplace aren't checking to see if that phone number is deactivated, right?
That's right.
That's just like one example. There's porting data, right, that is consumed. And sometimes that's live data, sometimes it's batch, sometimes it's batched every 5 minutes, right? So you have to have a lot of intelligence and operational awareness to fine-tune these processes and ingest that data and make it available real time as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I must agree with Brian, right? I mean, when you think about the role that the mobile phone number is playing in our society nowadays, I mean, it has improved dramatically since the smartphones came about, right? Like since the iPhone has hit the market, I mean, nowadays you can't dissociate anyone from their phone. I know if I walk out of the house without my phone, I mean, within the next 5 minutes, I know that I don't have my phone and I'm running back to get it, right? Like, so, and it's the same for most of our consumers, right? So unless you're a fraudster and you have like 15 phones that are all jailbroken and burning, are you trying to do fraud with? Like most people typically have maybe 1, 2 devices, right? And that phone number, I mean, it's essentially their new identifier. I mean, I haven't changed my phone number in 20 years, right? And if I do go somewhere else, like if I switch companies, I'm porting that number with me, right? Because I don't want to have to give it to my entire network. So just the role that the mobile device plays, in our lives today makes it a very good choice to kind of anchor your business around, because I don't anticipate that it's going to go away. I think people are going to get more and more hooked to their devices as we go along, which can be good or bad, right? However you look at it. But it's definitely a great choice. And another thing also is it's a great complement to Equifax data, because traditionally Equifax has great financial data, but we haven't been good at collecting mobile device data, right? And so by being complemented or enhanced or augmented by Zumigo, where not really strong, it makes us even more equipped to address fraud and to verify people's identity. So it makes the solution overall more robust.
I have one more question. I mean, back to your insurance use case, Serge.
Yes.
I mean, let's say one topic for a lot of companies always looking about what is the business case. Implementing a solution takes time and effort, costs money. And I really like the emphasis on operational efficiency, because not just reducing the fraud, which also costs a lot of money, but also potentially having less effort, having less support needed to do these manual steps. Is this an important consideration for your existing customers today using this solution to really lower the effort for running such an onboarding or such a claim process?
Yeah, you're actually spot on, Ronald. It's actually that, right? Like when you go talk to customers and you lead the conversation with fraud mitigation, I don't think that you're as successful as if you are trying to get them to accept more good consumers, right? Like essentially all of the businesses are tasked to grow their top line and bottom line, so fraud is more of a cost reduction, or it's more of a loss mitigation tactic and strategy when most business really want to grow their business. And so the approach and the gist of the conversation typically should revolve around how can we help you grow your business, right, and allow more good customers in and keep the fraudsters out. So we're not really leading by just emphasizing fraud mitigation, but we're really trying to help with digital enablement of our customer businesses and how they can grow their top line. And in the process of doing that, we're also reducing fraud, which is a big component of it. So I totally agree with you. That's how you lead the conversation with customers, because that's what resonates with them most.
Perfect. We're already coming close to the hour. Before I give you both the final words, I just want to emphasize what the audience can see. All of us attending Money 2020 in Las Vegas. So if someone wants to get more information from Zumigo, Equifax, you can see here the information where you can find them. But before we closing this webinar of today, I just want to give the final word to Serge and Brian for any kind of last comments to the audience. Brian.
Yeah, I hope the audience found this informative and learned why I'm advocating and kind of championing the phone number as the new identifier, replacing social security numbers or username passwords. Thank you.
Very, very precise and straightforward.
Thank you. Yeah. I like it, short and sweet. And I'll reiterate Brian's point, right? Like if you're looking for a robust solution to help grow your customer base, right, in a low friction environment that is very secure, connect with us. Either Equifax or Zumigo will be happy to take you down the path.
Perfect. And again, a big thank you to Brian and Serge for being here today. It was great to learn how to use this partnership in real life. And yeah, let's keep fighting. And thank you to the audience for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Keep fighting fraud.